Hey everybody, it's Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and welcome back to another Friday video. This one's going to be a bit of a hodgepodge because, man, it's been a weird couple of weeks. So we'll start with, if you didn't see the video, I'll put a link right up here, but a few weeks ago we were in Louisiana, we took our camper, we had all kinds of problems. I think I titled the video of the best laid plans of mice and men or something. We actually had, an axle break while we were driving from Louisiana to Florida with our 30-foot bumper pull camper. I ended up having to leave it in the panhandle of Florida at a very small campground storage area while a new axle was made for this particular unit. COVID and everything else, they just weren't readily available. So in this video, we go back over to the panhandle of Florida and we pick up the camper. We'll show you how that turns out. So it's been there for a good 4 weeks. We've been talking to the gentleman that does the work on him. Has been very polite and friendly and thankfully has finished the work. So I am going there to meet him, and as I pull up, this is what I see.
We're at the Hitchin Post Campground and RV Corral Park in Cottondale, Florida. We're on the backside on the edge of the highway, and the camper's in good shape sitting here. Yep, looks good.
I've got some work to do here. I'm gonna have to have a little body work done on the camper where that tire came off and just tore that up. But that's at least good. I do need a new hub on the wheel, but got new springs in there. You can kind of see them inside. All new leaf springs as well, just in case.
So when we got there, the gentleman that repaired the actual RV met me there. So while I was hooking up the truck, he was going back and lifting up all of the jacks, double checking the lug nuts, just giving it the once around, making sure everything was good. I then pulled it up onto the little street within the campground. He came back and double checked all the lug nuts again, just because now we were level. And I just took it a little drive right around the block within the campground. Everything seemed good, and he agreed to follow me for a portion of the trip. Not much, 5 miles or so. And his guidance was, do me a favor, when you get 20-30 miles down the road, stop and double check the lug nuts. Just want to make sure nothing vibrates loose or anything like that. So that was his guidance, and all in all, new undercarriage, everything seems to be pretty good. What was kind of cool, however, is I did this on a Friday, and I left my house at 5 something in the morning, went straight up to the panhandle, got there around lunchtime. It's one of the things I just love about my job. It's flexible enough that I was able to do that, right? Take my conference calls while in the car on the drive and plan to do this at my lunchtime and then drive back, which is just, it's still surreal to me how flexible and awesome that is. But while I was making that drive, I was talking to one of my coworkers who was taking the day off, and he was driving from where he lives to Atlanta with his wife. And it turns out that we were going to be like in the same exact spot within 10 minutes of one another. So he stopped right there. It was really cool. We got to see him. In this day of COVID, we're all working remotely. We don't get to see one another very frequently. We don't often anyway because we live in different parts of the country, but we see each other on video conferencing at work. But it was great to get to see somebody. But it's weird, we are so social distanced right now, and you're avoiding, going out in public and being around other people, short of, running to the store for the most part. There was that awkward sort of moment, like, do I shake your hand? Do I give you an elbow bump? Do we give hugs? What do we do? And it turns out, we kind of figured, like, what the heck? We're both been quarantining and doing what's right for our family. So it was great to give him a big hug and see my coworker and his wife, and yeah, that was kind of fun. I'll show you the picture of it. We snapped a couple while we were there, and the funny thing is, as we left and each went in our own separate directions, we sent the picture to one of our coworkers whose first comment was, "Oh, I see you're not social distancing." I'm like, oh, shamed into it. So it was time to get on the road. I went ahead and pulled out. The repair guy followed me for a ways, pulled over on the side, thanked him again for all of his work, and I took off. And I did stop a few times, probably for the first 3 or 4 rest stops. I did stop and double check all the lug nuts, just wanted to make sure everything was okay. It's funny, I actually called him because I noticed a couple of them seemed loose with a crack on them. I'm like, I feel like these are cracked. I don't know if your impact wrench did it or something. And he says, nah, he goes, there's plastic covers on those things. He goes, I would recommend you replace those. The camper manufacturers make these things really cheap. It's like a steel nut with a plastic chrome sort of thing on top of it, so it looks like a nice fancy bowl. He goes, it's not saving much money. They're like $1.50 a piece. Like go to a local auto parts store or camper or trailer store and buy yourself, real chrome, lug nuts for that thing. So that's exactly what we'll do when we get back.
Well, the good news is I came back to Cottondale, Florida. I met the mobile repair guy for the camper out there. He said everything was all set, new axle, new springs, repacked bearings, the whole bit. He found the issue with it. Everything seems to be going okay. When I first pulled out, I was a little worried my lug nuts were cracked, but it turns out there's just a little plastic cover over it, so that's all it was. But yeah, at this stage, everything looks pretty good. I've driven about 4 hours so far. I've got about 3 more to go, and it certainly looks good. All in all, I'm thrilled with the fact that it's all running and doing well. Hopefully this is my last fill up of gas, and I'll be back home to the storage unit just about dark time tonight.
This was a long drive. The video clips you just saw on the side of the road were actually where I stopped at one of the gas stations. I get about 9 miles to the gallon when being very efficient. It goes down to about 7.5 the way I normally drive when I'm pulling that camper. So I stop for gas quite frequently. Yeah, so we got home 10:30, 11, something like that at night that day. I did call Deb and ask her if she would run over and meet me at the storage place where we keep it, just to guide me in. So we got it backed into the parking spot, unhooked it, and I'm glad I did. By the way, I had her come guide me in, because last time we took this thing out, when I backed in, I actually nudged into the camper next to me and called the camper storage place and said, hey, can you give me the contact info for this person that's next to me? I hit their camper. Thankfully it was a tiny little smudge mark on the side of theirs. It wasn't a big deal. They thought so too, thankfully, but yeah, bumped into it, so that really kind of sucked. All right, so separate topic. Where we live in Southwest Florida, there are a ton of mango trees. When we bought this house, we loved it, and we started noticing, I'll sit out on the back dock and the people catty corner to us across the canal, they've got this tree that's got to be 30 feet tall and 20 feet wide, just full of mangoes, big, plump, maroon-looking mangoes. And every once in a while, I'll sit out on the patio or on the dock early in the morning with my coffee, and I'll hear them when they're ripe and they fall off. You hear this thump as they hit the ground sometimes. Directly across from us, we hear the same thing with coconuts. They're a much louder thud, and they'll hit the ground, and then they'll roll, and they'll go kind of the edge of the canal, and then you hear it fall into the water, just kerplunk, splash into the water. But they're all over the place. Like down my street, almost every house down the way has mango trees in the front or backyard. We don't, sadly. However, we had one of our neighbors come by a few weeks ago, and they brought some mangoes. Like, do you have mangoes? We have some. Like, yeah, that's great, right? So Deb and I had fresh mango, and there's just something about a fresh mango. I mean, fresh, that is just so good. Well, over the next couple of weeks, the neighbors came by every few days with more, and it turns out they were taking care of the house directly next to them. Those folks were out of town for a month or so, and they were taking care of their lawn, and they said, we go over every couple of days and we pick off all the ripe mangoes, and there's way more than we're ever going to have or be able to use, so would you like some? We're like, we would love it. So they've been bringing over anywhere from 5 to 10 mangoes every 3 to 4 days, which has just been awesome. Deb and I have made mango jelly, mango chutney, we have made mango salsa, and we have been having smoothies, and I'll show you some of these smoothies. They are so good. I'll have to show this in a future video. Take a glass cup, and it's just about the right circular angle to scoop right into the flesh, and then just dump that out. You get a half a mango, just beautifully shaped, pop it right into the smoothie cup or the blender. So do that on both sides. So you may wonder how we go about making mango smoothies. And when you have the fresh mango, it's phenomenal. We have a Ninja blender, so what you're looking at here is the cup for the Ninja blender, but you could use any of those little single-use blender cups, like NutriBullet or whatever, or frankly just a regular old blender. But because of this, we can do 2 small smoothies or 1 large in each of these servings. And it's as simple as taking 1 whole mango, and we slice out either side of the pit, and we use a cup to gather all the meat off the flesh. We drop the 2 halves right into the cup. We also add in a little bit of soy milk or skim milk, about a half to 3/4 of a cup, and then we add in 1 banana, and it really is that simple. If you could add a little crushed ice if you want to make sure it's cold, but just flip it over, put it on the blender, and blend for about 10 seconds until smooth, and it's filling and delicious, and there's something about that fresh mango, man. All right, let's talk hurricanes and Dream Chaser. So as you know, a few weeks ago, we were back in Louisiana. Gosh, it's been a little over a month ago now. And we were going to start prepping the boat in prep for coming over here. We were hoping to do that in June. It was late June before we were able to get to Louisiana to do the work on it. We're then starting to get into hurricane season and thinking, yeah, we might still be able to do it early in hurricane season, sail it back across the Gulf down here. A little nervous about that for more than just one reason. The storm reason, but also, I haven't had a sea trial in this boat since we've done this full-blown refit, and you're talking 4.5 years. I'm a little nervous about running up into the Gulf of Mexico with it as my very first run, especially at the edges of hurricane season where we could see some pretty rough sea state depending on storms that may be forming out somewhere. But it's been really active, right? Like we had a couple of them, but first we had Gonzalo, which was running out across the Atlantic, coming up, sort of northwest, if you will, hugging South America, coming in below most of the Caribbean islands, and it looked like it was going to come right kind of through the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico and work its way up. So we were really keeping an eye on that one. Luckily, it fizzled out just on, just near Venezuela a little bit, and it never did sort of pick up some of that steam that we expected it to in the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico with the warm water. So we had Gonzalo a few weeks ago, and then we had Hanna. This was one that just formed right in the Gulf of Mexico and ran sort of westward into Corpus Christi and into Texas. The funny thing is that was weeks ago, and it's still lingering around as a low pressure system right in the middle of Mexico. Not a big storm, not one people would worry about, probably no more than rain and thunderstorms, but it's still there, the remnants of it. So that was Hanna, and that thing, hit. If you've watched any news, you would have seen in Corpus Christi where it hit. And now we have Issias, I think is the way we're saying this thing. Another one formed in the Atlantic. It's come across some of the Caribbean islands. It went through Puerto Rico. I'm recording this early Friday morning. It went across Hispaniola, which is the island where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are. So it's kind of working its way there, and it's been interesting watching this one. It was swinging every day. First it was going to hit Florida, like near Miami, so on the East Coast, and kind of hit going northward. Then the next day it was showing that it was actually going to go west of Florida completely and run right up the edge of the Gulf of Mexico, which would have been bad for us where we are. That's the location where we would have seen probably the highest amount of potential risk, right? Because hurricanes go in a counterclockwise rotation, when you're looking at a map down on them, go counterclockwise, it means that the highest wind velocity is in the northeast corner of it, but the northeast quadrant of it is the worst part of it. So if it runs just west of you, you're going to get hit with that northeast side of it. So we were a little bit worried about that. Within 24 hours, that forecast again shifted. It looks like it was going to go right up the gullet of Florida, like come right in at Key Biscayne area, and then go straight up the center of Florida. And Florida is not a very wide state, so when that happens, you're getting edge results of that on both the east and the west coast. And then within 12 hours, it has shifted out again toward the Atlantic, where it looked like it was going to run up the Atlantic coast but not even make landfall, which would be better. That's the weaker side of the storm that would be touching land. There's essentially 3 hurricane forecasting models, or spaghetti models. There's the North American model, the European model, and the global model. I tend to use the GFS, the global model, most frequently. In this European model, you can see how the storm forms down in the Caribbean, and I'm just doing it from yesterday, so I don't have it from where it actually formed out in the Atlantic, but you see it here in the Caribbean. It's just passing Hispaniola. You can see the organization of the rotation here, and it travels up, and you can see it definitely makes a hook, right? It's kind of going west-northwest, and then it begins to steer up to the north, and it gets near that Gulf Stream and that warm water, and it starts to angle out again, which is good. It means we have jet streams coming west to east across the U.S., and it's going to help push it out into the Atlantic. We also have the global model, the GFS model, which, as I mentioned, was showing it going up the west coast earlier, and now you can see it's almost identical. So I like it when the 3 models are all in agreement. It gives me more confidence in the forecast for this. But it's still Mother Nature. It can do whatever it so desires along the way sometimes. So as you can see, this one's very similar. It runs almost the exact same angle and then stays out in the Atlantic. And the last one here is the North American model, and first thing you notice is the screen looks a little different. Because it's a North American model, they actually don't image outside of a certain boundary, which is why you see gray in part of this photo. And all of this is courtesy of Windy, by the way. If you don't use the Windy app or the Windy website, it's phenomenal, windy.com. So the North American model, you can see, does something very similar. The North American model doesn't forecast out as far, it goes out 3 days, so you'll notice that where this video ends, it doesn't go quite up as far up the East Coast because of that. So what does that mean for us? I think it means we're not exactly sure when we're going to sail Dream Chaser across. There's just been too many of these things, and I really don't like the idea of crossing that shallow part of the Gulf in the winter. You know, not because the weather's horrible, but I mean, from a cold perspective, but because the sea state isn't necessarily good. And I think that may end up being when we do this. So we may go later in hurricane season as things are winding down, and maybe that's the time when we take the boat back across. What a hodgepodge, huh? From axles to mangoes to hurricanes. Well, I hope everybody's having a great week. We will see you all next Friday on another video here, not aboard sailing vessel Dream Chaser, sadly. And as you notice, the content's been a little bit odd. I sure as hell wish I was doing boat repair work and sailing and everything else. You know, something out on the boat. I'm going into withdrawals, for crying out loud. So safe sailing, y'all. We'll see you next Friday, or we'll see you Tuesday if you're here for our grilling video series on Tuesdays. Bye, y'all.